Hey guys, so the soap we're going to use today, British Leather from Stirling, as we continue to celebrate and just run through some of my favorite Stirling soaps. This got kind of a vintage feel to it, obviously. I'm sure it's an homage to English leather. A cologne actually may have been my first one way back in the early 80s, and would be my guess. And it was too strong for me at the time. I didn't really enjoy it, and I was too young anyway. But I think it's what my parents bought for me because I was just little. Well, I don't know, little, not little, but maybe 11, 12, 13. I don't know. Anyway, that's the soap for today, and the brush. And we're going to talk more about the brush kind of arrangement today. This is the 1250 from Semogue. And the catch here, you can look at the logo there, and he's been soaking for a while. It's the Excelsior logo. Let me keep that water from just dripping everywhere. It's the Excelsior. Now, I just learned, well, several months ago, one of you kind viewers let me know that Semogue had changed their brush lineup quite a bit. We'll talk more about that. Today, we're going to be continuing on with this wonderful razor, and it's on loan from Michael Friedberg, the very awesome YouTube shaver. And we're going to continue using the Pella blade. And I to keep everything straight, I wrote this is was purchased from Maggard Razors, and so this is how they come if you buy the Pella from Maggard Razors. And yes, you can use the injector. There's a little place there. You can use the injector for this. But let me show you if you don't have the injector case, or because I think they sell some of these that don't have the key. And a lot of the injector razors like this one, you need the key because it separates the two pieces that are spring held tight together. And you need the key to allow the blade to move out and then to allow the other blade, the Newman, to come in. But with this guy, you just undo the knob. And if you don't want to use and the screw comes off there, if you don't want to use the injector, you can see there's that slot where the injector key would go. Then what I would advise you to do, I'm also using this as a second purpose to show you this is the 2-dot, which is the middle setting, the middle base plate offered for this, the Supply single edge. I'm calling it the 0.9 version because it was the one released to evaluators before the 1.0 came out. It's probably the same as the 1.0. And so they call this the comfortable, is the term they used for the middle base plate here. I used the aggressive in recent shaves. We're going to step back to the comfortable today. And if you don't have the injector key, I think one of the easiest ways to put the blade in is to hold the base plate with the kind of visible part kind of facing you, okay, and then lay the blade down and bring it toward the stops, and so that it's kind of in the position where it's going to be, okay, and then I'm holding it by the sides for this very reason, so that I can bring the razor on top of it like that, and then the blade doesn't really have to move anywhere. You kind of have to make sure that bottom part down here goes in first, and then there we go. The blade edges there are on those stops, and it was actually a lot easier than I made it out to be just now. So it gets a piece of cake there to change those out. Now, Supply says you won't need to change out these blades, but maybe 10 or 12 uses or so. I don't know how often it'll be for me. We'll see. So today is going to be, I believe, the 5th use of this Pella blade. The Pella brand is a rebranding, or another way of looking at the Personna injector blade. Same blade. So Pella/Personna. Same thing. It's just a different quantities or something like that. All right, so we'll put him down, and I'm going to get my face wet. All right, very good. So let's talk right quick about the the Boar brush rotation that I've kind of labeled my Boarathon now for a couple of years. And at first I started with maybe half a dozen brushes. I wanted to use them each in a rotation so that they would mature together, and that would make it more comparable. I could say, well, here's this Omega, and it's much more stiff than a Zenith of the same age, because Boar brushes do age, and you cannot compare a 300 use Omega brush with a 5-use Semogue brush. It's just not a fair comparison. The tips split and the splay changes and all sorts of things, right? You need to compare apples and apples. And even then, okay, like I explained last video, you kind of can't compare. Like, what did I use? I used an Omega recently, and it was prickly. I didn't enjoy it at all. But I can't say that all Omegas are bad, right? Because it's a young Omega. It's only got 26 uses on it. It's going to change. Now, granted, it might take 300, 400, 500 uses unless you use some kind of accelerator, but then it becomes something different. Okay, so I'm always going to tell you guys that I'm dealing with a young boar, or I'm going to tell you the age of it so that we can compare apples to apples. Now, gradually that boar rotation, because so many of the Semogue boars are really cheap. The Stirling boar, really cheap. The Zenith B10 is a cheap one. The Omegas are cheap as well. Matter of fact, one of these, the 80266, I got for free. I got my little list here. And so it's a really great type of brush if you like variety, because it doesn't take a lot of cost for you to get some variety and be able to watch these brushes grow up and mature as you use them. Man, some of them are stinky the first few uses. Not smell-wise, but they kill the lather. You have to go back to the soap puck. And that's normal for young boar brushes. Some of them at least. Well, many of them, let's say. But then, very often, the Semogues, the Zeniths would stop killing lather between 5 and 15 uses, and then they're easy and enjoyable to use. But they're still not fully awesome yet because they still got plenty of tips to split. So, as I got doing my rotation here, got a couple of Omegas in the rotation, some Semogues, Stirling, their inexpensive little boar brush, and then 2 Zeniths. Kind of a small one here with the B10, I think. Yeah, I think so. And then the B23 is that one on the nice barber handle, and it's got a more parallel bore. It's got a lot more backbone than the other one. So that's why I had 2 Zeniths in there, even though it's the same bristle. Well, as you can see, almost all of them have had 25 uses on them, and some of them obviously have had more. Well, the one we're using today, we're going to finally fill in this little box here. This is the 1250 from Semogue. Okay, and then after I use him another time and then him another time, I'm going to be filling in the rest of these blanks to top them all off at 27 uses. We've already got a couple that have reached 27, so they're going to wait for the others to catch up. And then you can see by these icons here, I'm going to use my hair dryer treatment, which is something that I've recently done a test on with my Semogue Owners Club, the one with the Taj handle. And I'm going to do, after 27 uses, before I use it again on the 28th, each brush is going to get 5 treatments. Because why? Why are you going to do that? Because you know what I've said for years with boar brushes? Best thing to do is just use them. It's the safest way to break them in. And I stand behind that 100%. However, with this many rotations, with this many brushes in my rotation, it's going to take me forever to get these brushes to that magical place where they have tons of tips that are split. It's just going to take too long. I finally acknowledged, acquiesced to choosing a break-in method to help things. For the last 10 or 15 uses on all these, I have done a minor break-in method, which is just soaking them for maybe an hour before use. And I think that does help to speed it up some. And I would recommend that to anybody who wants. I think it's a safe way, because here's the key. If you have a boar bristle, and I've very commonly seen them split into 4 splits. But if they don't split right, if you're too harsh with the splitting mechanism, whatever protocol you use, and one of them breaks off, maybe 2 of them break off, then now you got half as many tips, and you're kind of damaging the brush at that point. Now, maybe it's worth it to you, maybe it's not. That's for you to decide. But my goal was, we need to keep any tips that are split, do our best to keep them intact and not split in a weird way. And so my thought, and I think this is the thought of many boars out there, boar guys who say, just use it, because that'll be the safest way to split it, most likely. Well, like I said, it's going to take too long, right? And so a friend of mine, SpongeBob, inspired me with his particular technique. I took it, made an educated guess, made some practical tweaks from my side, and I've done mine, and I've got a video that I released a few weeks ago about what I was doing. So if you can check that out if you want. And so that is what we're going to do during these little gaps. And then once a brush has had 5 treatments, then I can use it for the next time. And then we're going to repeat that until we get to 30. And then once all the brushes are at 30, I think it'll be really interesting to see the differences. Because with my Semogue Owners Club, I was able to see a noticeable difference when I had used it. I think it was on its 62nd use or somewhere around there. I did 10 treatments before its 63rd use. 10 hair dryer treatments. And it was noticeable how much more soft it was, and how the feel changed from kind of a wiriness, that where you could feel the bristles, but not a wiriness like a scritchy wiriness. It was just kind of a sparse feeling. Comfortable, but sparse. And then when those tips, after those 10 treatments, those tips were softer because there were more of them. 3 times as many of them, probably. And so then it had a whole different feel to it. Much better, much more luxurious. That is where we're starting to more aggressively step toward that feeling that boar users love. And the ones who finally get there, it's this promised land. But the people who get bored or abandon boars a little too quickly never know what it's like. So that's what we're trying to find here with all this. And so, helpful also, something that Semogue has done, and this is something that I alluded to earlier. I pointed out that the handle had the Excelsior logo. Several months ago, a year ago, something like that, Semogue seems like they ramped down their Excelsior line and ramped up a line called Hereditas. And maybe they just did a name change, but along with that name change, the brushes changed grades in some cases. And so I made a little chart. Based on the internet information I can find, this is as good of information as I can see. I need to contact Semogue and see how accurate this is. For instance, well, let's speak in general terms. In general, most, you had the premium grade bristles, you had best, and then you had extra. And now above that was one called special, and that was the Semogue Owners Club. And this is how it's been for the last several years. Okay, kind of 4 grades. Special, then premium, then best, and then extra. Now here's the cool thing. Extra's the lowest grade. I've got that little 1438 that's extra. It's a really enjoyable brush. I don't think it's scritchy at all. I look forward to using it. And so no matter what grade, I really like all of Semogue's grades. Okay, so let's say that up front. And what happened in general is that there were about half a dozen or slightly less grade best brushes. And most of those have been downgraded to the extra bristles. There's one, I don't actually have it. There's one that stayed a best, but most of the ones that were best are now extras. For instance, like the 1250 that I'm using today. If you have the 1250 in Excelsior, which is mine, it's the best grade. If you have the Hereditas 1250, it's the extra grade. It's going to add a lot of confusion, but at least they were kind enough to change the line name. The logo on the handle should change. It is currently saying Hereditas, and so at least that will eliminate any confusion. But it also means that anytime I demo one of these brushes, I've got to make that distinction, right? The 1305 is a super popular brush. It stayed premium to premium. So many of the premiums are staying that way. The Semogue Owners Club is special. Now they changed it to Premium Select. I don't know if that's just a renaming or if that is actually a change in bristle. The Torga C5 is kind of new. It came along, so it didn't really have an old version. The 1438, that's that little guy with the kind of red handle. He's really tiny. He was extra, which is kind of the lowest grade, and he stays extra. So that's kind of logical. But here we have the 1800 and the 2000. Both of those I highly recommend. In the Excelsior, the 1800 was extra grade plus some premium as well. So that was extra to give it a little bit more backbone, and then the premium to have those soft tips. It's kind of a combo of both. Well, they changed that to just extra grade now. So the 1800 Hereditas is going to have a little bit different feel because of that. The 2000, that's kind of the one I recommended to people with if they wanted a Semogue Owners Club, but they didn't want to spend that extra money. It's very similar because it had the premium grade hair in there. Apparently, they had something called a super hair as well, bristle, and it was premium and super was the 2000. Well, that's been downgraded to extra. So that should be a pretty big change, right, for those couple. So some of them have changed, some of them have not. Unfortunately, it's made more complex now. Did they do it because of finances, because of COVID and hard times and things, difficulty in getting boar hair imported or something like that? Maybe so. Maybe that's all there is to it. The best grade, did their supplier run out, or did they change processes to where they no longer were able to provide that best, and so this was just a necessary thing to move away from the best and move everything toward extra? Maybe that's what it is too. I don't know. I might try to find out. But anyway, today's 1250 is the Excelsior, and so that means it's their best grade hair. Second from the bottom, still very enjoyable. It's not a dense knot, very soft, a very light feel on your face. It's not going to be very scrubby. I think of it more luxurious, that kind of thing. All right, let's load up. Enough of this talk, right? Get a little bit more water on my face. Kind of try to keep my beard. We're looking at about a 1.5 day growth today. Right now. This guy's been in the water for a while, and so he has got plenty of water in those bristles. If you're new to boar brushes, then know that they absorb water, and that's why they change so much. The synthetic, of course, those don't absorb water at all. Badgers absorb a little bit of water. Boars absorb a lot of water. Some boars are like brooms, how stiff they are when they're dry. But you get them wet, and they're much nicer. All right, here we go. 30 seconds sounds like a good even round number to try and start out with. 55 seconds is where we're going to start. So then 25 on the next minute will be where we stop. And this is the 6.8 ounce, 5.8 ounce tub of Stirling. And so look, we've had plenty of water in the brush to kind of start a slurry going here. 10 more seconds of loading. And there we go. So we've got some nice, good-looking stuff overflowing. So that tells me that we probably have a pretty good load here. One thing I don't want to forget is I wanted to do kind of a dry loading experiment where I squeezed out my brushes instead of just shaking most of the water out. I need to remember to do that. I'm going to take some of this overflow here and kind of do a pre-wash. even from this kind of a little bit of remnant that I put on my face, I can get a good, I can start to apprehend the smell of the lather of the soap. And it does have kind of that musky nature that is its hallmark. So it's definitely bringing that along with it in terms of when Stirling recreated it. I don't know. I think I remember something about this one being a little hard to locate. I don't know if it was maybe a temporary release that they did. Not sure. Maybe it didn't sell all that great, so they had to back it off or something. All right, so let's whip up that lather. And as I press into the bowl here lightly, it brush, because it's got such an easy splay. It's even before you get it to your face, you can learn about the brush right now when it's in the bowl. I know that it's going to be comfy, and there's plenty of room inside the brush because it's not dense, and so there's plenty of room for lather. So it's not one of the ones like those really dense badgers where you kind of have to roll the outside of the lather and then push it into the inside of the brush. You're not going to need to do that with this kind of brush. And I've got the water. I'm not going to add all this, almost certainly, but what I do is subtract at the end, and then that way I know how much I added. Semogue has just a wonderful design handle here. It's small, but it's ergonomic in the right ways. It's got a nice look to it as well. I think so. No wonder they have chosen it, had it for so many years, and have chosen it for so many of their brushes. It has a little bit of a jolt to it, the muskiness, and I don't really know what note in there is so kind of vibrant, but I think this is a good one to when you really want some strength to your lather in terms of soap scent. Also, it might be a good morning one to kind of help you wake up. And this is the beef tallow, Stirling's kind of standard base that most of their scents are in. Looking great. Cigar trivia, since I'm kind of getting into cigars lately. I'm on the quest now to find I've got a couple of samplers ordered that are very economical cigars. Still full tobacco, but not any kind of weird filler or anything like that. Long fillers, that kind of thing, but more like $1 a cigar. $1.50. That's kind of what I'm looking for something that would be enjoyable on a regular basis that won't break the bank. A little bit of trivia that anybody who's been around cigars probably already knows. You do not want to take a half smoked cigar, and I even use the cutter to cut off most of the burned tip because I didn't have time to smoke the whole thing. But I did leave a little bit of burned tobacco on the end. I should have been more aggressive and cut more off, because as I took it back for the second time and smoked it again, it smoked great. But unfortunately, when I put it back in my humidor with that little bit of burn stuff, it kind of tainted it made my humidor smell more like and I've got this basic, small, simple humidor, made it smell more like an ashtray than the rich tobacco scent that it used to smell like. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to get that scent out. Fortunately, it's a plastic humidor, and so I think I can just give it a good wash, and let that be it. I'm gonna go buy some inexpensive Tupperware type food containers to hold most of my cigars. Maybe someday I'll have a nice wooden humidor. Oh, look at the way that flows. Oh, that's beautiful. That looks great. Looks like 30 seconds of loading was a great choice. It's a wonderful looking lather. All right, get my face wet again. All right, now this little guy, 22 millimeters is probably about what the diameter is, and there are guys out there who swear by their 28 millimeters. And this guy, he splays so easily that he's a bigger brush. You might need 28 if you like a stiff brush that is not going to splay as much, you see. But I tell you what, these smaller Semogues are one of the best bang for your bucks in terms of comfortable. Because right now this is smooth. There's just no scritch. There's nothing in here that is uncomfortable at all. It's just luxurious. A great lather like this one right here is really helping the brush to shine. And I am going to really look forward to see what happens when this particular brush gets his hairdryer treatments. I do feel a little bit of the sparsity of the bristles. And so when it gets its treatments, it's going to get softer. So we know that's going to happen. But is that, when those tips split, is that going to add more density? Is it going to feel less sparse? Or is it just going to be softer? So that's something I'm really curious about with a lot of my Semogues. There are a couple, like the Torga C5. It's not this guy. It's a shorter loft. It's got a lot more backbone, and he's more densely packed. And so it'll be fun to watch him transform as well. All right. Very comfy. Great. So, as we shave today with the Pella blade in the medium base plate, the comfortable so-called base plate of the Supply single edge, this is going to be in comparison to a bad shave that I had with this same brand blade at the same age a week or two ago. We'll see how he's going to go. Before, the experience failed in both regards of the goal of shaving. The primary goal for most guys is probably to get a close shave. Secondary goal is to do it comfortably. And before, under these same conditions with a different blade, it failed on both parts. It was tuggy, but then even after 2 passes, I still had a lot of stubble that was left. And so it was obvious that a third pass was not going to make up for the first 2. And so what's going to happen now? Did that blade, because it had sat around for a couple of years, was it changed in some way? Was the edge changed in a negative way? Maybe I used it a time or two and didn't realize it. I don't think so. Maybe once. And so it's possible it was a 6th use, but since Supply claims that its blades, generally the blades, are going to last 10 to 12 shaves, that would seem to be a little short. So that would be something to find out. But right now, this feels, yeah, it's doing a good job of cutting. This is a whole different ball game here. So that's good to know. I'm glad to say that the Pellas, excuse me, are a great contender in this razor, just like the Chinese Shicks are. As I was messing around the other day, I actually found one of the packages, and so now it'd be great to, when I say Chinese Shicks, this is what I'm talking about. It'll say made in China in the back somewhere. And yeah, Schick Injector made in China for Edgewell Personal Care Brands, LLC, Shelton, Connecticut. So it's right up there. So when we say Chinese Shicks or Chicks, sometimes is what people say. This is the one we're talking about. They're on Amazon, they're on eBay, they're, out there on the internet for you to grab in the modern world. They're not vintage, and they do a great job. I probably like them a little better than the Pellas. And of course, that means Personna as well. Pellas and Personna are the same. All right. Very good. Splash my face a little bit here. Yes, I'm glad to report that it was a wonderful first pass. The majority of stubble has been taken down. And so that other blade, like I said, maybe it was age. Maybe something else happened. Some kind of fluke. Every once in a while, you do have a dead blade make it into the package. But the funny thing, I took that same blade when the razor I'm using right now, the single edge, when it couldn't hack it, I put that same blade into this, I think it's an E-type, vintage Schick Injector, and it did the job okay. So the geometry of that particular head of that vintage razor has got to be different than the razor I'm using today, and it just happened to work. Maybe it's more aggressive. I don't know. Yeah, I pretty much nailed this lather here. Now, some of you guys who like an opaque, kind of thicker lather, it's not going to be what you might prefer. But for me, it's pretty much perfect. I still have a creamy feel. I have nice, super slick rinses. When I go to rinse my face, man, it just feels lightning slick, greased pig kind of slick. And yet it has a creamy luxury nature to it as well. Not as much as the mutton tallow from Stirling, but still very good. Now we'll do cross grain. As I'm listening and feeling for the angle that feels like it's doing the most work, most effective cutting. Very comfortable. So this is the medium plate. And I tried the mild as well, and both of these can easily, for me, be a daily driver. And now it looks like I could choose either and be happy with either both the Pella and the Chinese Schick blades. You can also get on eBay and order the vintage Schick Injector blades, and I've heard people go crazy about those. They say they're just the best. And I may have some of those around somewhere. I'll have to check. Very comfortable. You do feel a little hint of the blade edge. I think this razor is a great one for somebody with sensitive skin. I think either the medium or the mild head. So this one's called Comfortable. The other one's called Super Sensitive or Sensitive, I think. Something like that. Both of them are very enjoyable and kind to my skin. But they've got a little bit of blade feel. At least this one does. And so you do have to watch your technique, but it's almost foolproof. Kind of have to be an idiot to cut yourself with this one, or a beginner who just hasn't learned yet. All right. Face feels great. wonderful movement with the razor. So the lather is being very slick and doing its job. It's doing great. Charge up the brush with the last pass of lather, and if I'm using the same puck of Stirling, the same tub over and over, I don't have to load for 30 seconds like I did today, because a little bit of water will remain in the soap, and I could probably dial it down to like 15 seconds through the course of a few days. And so you do, with consecutive use, can definitely change. That does affect your load time. But 30 seconds is a great one because I have a large rotation of soaps. The soap has dried out by the time I come back to it again, you know. So 30 seconds is pretty much perfect. I've got plenty of lather here, as you can see. I've got at least 2 passes left in the bowl. So yeah, that's a terrific, it just feels terrific on the face. And no hint of scritch to this brush. See, it doesn't have a whole lot of density to it. Now, they did build it when they glued together the knot. They built it with a little bit of kind of automatic splay to where these side bristles do come out at an angle, but it's really not a very dense, not at all. With the Boar brush, if you do want density, then that the C5 Torga is more dense, but also just Zenith has some great options. Semogue doesn't have as many options when you're talking density, but Zenith does. And you can also graduate up to 30 millimeters. There's also like a 32, I think, that Zenith has. Really curious about that one. Wouldn't mind trying that guy out sometime. All right, so third pass, and it's just gonna zip by because I think we're just cleaning up just a few bristles, and I can kind of angle up a little bit probably. Just to have a slicing action to my shaving now. Almost a little bit of an against the grain type angle there. It's kind of a slant motion. I'm going to try this way and see. I think that's a better kind of a cross grain right there. I think that's a better approach to get a little bit more efficient right there. Very kind of Michael Friedberg to loan me this guy, and I can definitely see why he's proud of it. I can definitely see why he's a big supporter of this razor, because it just does such a great job, and it does it comfortably. Very nice. I'm going to go rinse. I also, oh, you know what? I did give myself a rinse, but not completely. There we go. Fortunately, see, because I use lathers that are so wet, if I do have a little bit, you know, here, or, you know, somewhere, or right here, I don't really have to worry too much about it. I can just simply wipe it away, and it's still kind of nourishing. It's not going to leave me all dried out. Now, down here, I do have just a hint of tenderness. And so that, I think that tells you that even the medium setting here, it's not a wussy setting. It's still going to have that blade able to give you a good cut. Here is what this guy looks like after a good rinse. You can see how kind of sparse he is. And now he's wet. He'll be less sparse when he's dry, of course. We've got some clumping of the bristles, but I have towel stropped him as well. And we have a little bit of splitting around on the edges, but not a whole lot. While it is comfortable to use and manage to get there pretty quickly after, you know, 5 or 8 uses, he needs to have more of those tips split. And I think that aspect is what many people mean when they say Semogues take a long time to break in. And so for a different reason, I'm looking forward to watching him in the hairdryer treatments compared to this Omega, which I used last time. You see, it's got a longer throw, but this has finer bristles. And so that's why I think that's part of the reason why the Omegas have this longer loft, because their bristles are more coarse. And of course, this one isn't wet, and so he's going to be more like a broom, right? Very stiff. But I think that's why they use the long bristles, to help it not to be quite as stiff. But this guy, I'm looking forward to watch those tips split and see if maybe that sparsity becomes more dense because of the split tips. Right now, you're looking at a tip of 1 tip per 1 strand of hair, but surely it's going to thicken up when we start to have 4 tips for each strand of hair, right? That's what I'm thinking. Whereas this guy, I'm looking forward to watching him in the hairdryer treatments, just for the fact of getting him to be less prickly, getting those tips to split, to see what that kind of paradise zone is with him. Because I mean, you can hear how stiff he is, probably, if that audio is coming through. So I'm looking forward to the hairdryer treatments. The Semogue Owners Club that I did 10 treatments on, I looked at the tips, and it looks like plenty of them still have 4, sometimes even 5 splits, or 5 tips per strand. And that's encouraging. That tells me it's not a destructive method that I'm using. I'm keeping the hairdryer several inches away. I'm using warm heat, not hot, and I'm rotating the brush, that sort of thing. I'm trying to be aggressive, but safely aggressive, if that makes sense. Oh, that was a well-hydrated lather, and you can see why, because we're looking at maybe 22 milliliters of water used in that. 30 seconds of loading with a nice, easy, soft brush here. Terrific. And the scent was nice. It did calm down. It's not as strong as it is when you smell it right from the tub, because the lather evens out with the water and that sort of thing. And it's just a nice traditional scent. It's not overly musky or overpowering when it's in soap form. Now, I think the aftershave that's going to bring you that strength if that's what you're looking for. But this was kind of traditional, enjoyable, nostalgic, all those words for British leather today. What do we have on the docket? Are we going to keep on going with Stirling? Who knows? I do have some more Stirling. Oh, you know what? Gatlinburg. I've got a sample of Gatlinburg. It's not one that I have a full tub of, because I think it delves into the part of the woody notes that I don't like as much, the fir and the pine, that sort of thing. But I've got it as a sample, and it'll be fun to try. I've also got Ben Franklin. I have brought that one to you before, and it's very spicy and aromatic and heavy with scent, especially the liquid versions like the Splash. Probably be too strong for me, or something that I just wouldn't want to smell for a long length of time during my day. All right, guys, that was terrific. So the main thing I wanted to prove today, or check out, was, would this be a bad experience like this same situation a couple of weeks ago? 5th use of the Pella blade in the supply single edge with the medium plate. Bad shave last time, fine shave this time. So that's great. Maybe what I do next with this Pella blade, Pella/Personna, is switch out the base plate with the sensitive one. I already know that I love having these visual aids. I love having this shelf right here. So when I'm talking about something, many times I can show it to you easily. I started out using this razor with these blades, and they did great. In the mild and the medium, it did really well. And so right now, these are my favorites because they were a little bit more, they cut more smoothly. It felt sharper, but it cut more smoothly. How exactly that worked out, I'm not sure. But this guy is no slouch. He's enjoyable also. I'm really curious how many uses I'm going to get with these, because, I can get 30, 40 uses any day of the week from a double-edged blade. Indeed, I'm at 450 with the Nasset. Now, it's not super comfy, but it's possible, and it gets a nice close shave. So, Am I going to be able to get anywhere near that with a injector type blade? I doubt it because these blades are thicker. But uh, will I be able to get twice as many as the average person? 3 times as many as the average user? Um, my guess is I might land in about the same place as the average user because these are different blades by nature. Something I love and have loved since the very first time I used these injectors, and this may have been the razor I used, is that solid feel of the blade. You don't get that chatter. And so I think that helps with comfort. I think that helps with smoothness and keeping your skin less inflamed during the process. That thicker blade, I think it just works great. As long as it's sharp, of course. All right, so there we go. That's today's shave with the medium base plate. The brush did so well. I mean, it's small. Here's this 35 millimeter. See, in water, I'm talking milliliters. In brush, I'm talking millimeters, right? Here's the 35 millimeter Badger that's crazy dense. And there's a little 22 millimeter Boar that is not dense. And both of them are enjoyable for different reasons. Both of them are awesome. And if the world got weird and I was stuck with this one, or I was stuck with this one for the rest of my life, I'd be happy and fine. They both do great. Yeah, or I guess the point is the little guy that costs a lot less than this guy. He gives great comfy shaves. Now, if you're a person who likes some scritch, if you like the backbone, then this is not going to be your friend, right? And again, we're talking about the Excelsior version of the 1250, which is the best boar bristle grade. That best is the name. I'm not just talking about it's great, it's super. It's actually best is the specific word they use to describe this grade. I kind of wish they wouldn't have done that. They use finest with Badgers, and that's confusing to new people because they think it's just any old adjective, right? All right, there we go. Now as I've been talking to you, Lather has been very kind. I haven't had any irritation jump up. My face feels healthy and clean. It doesn't feel drying or anything like that. That's all I can ask for in a soap. Super slick. Nice, good, healthy feeling skin. So that was a British leather type scent. Let me see what, you know what? Might match this in the sense of the kind of a little bit of intensity, kind of some old school. Stirling Gentleman Balm. Put a little bit of water. And I think the Stirling Gentleman is going to work out great. I was looking at my camera and I put some balm on my goatee. Don't quite have the same reaction time and depth perception when looking at my screen on my camera as I do when I use the mirror. Got to remember near my mouth too. Maybe I should be using Pharaoh's Dreamsicle and maybe it'll taste better. And there we go. Just that little bit does a great job. All right. Oh yeah, that scent is right in line, and I think it bends. While I enjoy part of the English leather, the British leather, I think it's not wholly one of my favorites, and I think the Stirling Gentleman steers it with some of its notes into a place that I like a little better, so I like that transition there. So, great shave today. I hope there's been something in here to help you with your shaving journey. We talked about the brush being wonderful today for me and my preferences. The razor did really well. It redeemed itself with the new blade. And I think that covers everything. Yeah, and we talked about the soap and how the lather was just terrific. You know what would be funny? I've got this looks like a gray color. It depends on what color shirt I wear as to what color that looks. And if I were to wear a gray, would it be funny if I did a green screen, some kind of green screen thing, and I wore a gray bandana on the top? I could just be a floating head shaving. I think that'd be hilarious. All right, there we go, guys. Terrific, terrific. All the best to you guys. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves, and that's today's shave. Really enjoyed it. Take care now. We'll see you next time.